the Green Belt. Prologue. In 1977, in Kenya, a movement began around trees. It would later be known through one name, Wangari Maathai. But the work did not begin as one woman standing above history. It began with many women naming the same problem from different villages, different households, different worn-out paths. The wood was farther away, the water was less reliable, the soil was leaving, and someone still had to cook. Act 1. The soil. The first source of the Green Belt movement was what rural women were already saying about their lives. Wangari Maathai heard those concerns through her work with the National Council of Women of Kenya. The women were describing basic shortages. A shortage of firewood changed the length of a day. Poor water changed the security of a household. Exhausted soil changed what could be grown, stored, eaten, or sold. Land could still produce value on paper, while the people living near it carried the loss in practice. Maathai did not treat these complaints as isolated domestic burdens. She understood them as signs of environmental damage, land mismanagement, and a wider economic structure pressing down on women. She knew that when forests disappear, biodiversity disappears with them, water systems weaken, and the land loses some of its ability to protect the people living on it. But the answer that emerged was not a policy paper first. It was a tree. Tree planting was simple enough to begin. A planted tree could provide fuel, food, shade, soil protection, and eventually some income. It could also give women a task that did not require waiting for permission from the same structures that had ignored the problem in the first place. The early Greenbelt work began under the National Council of Women of Kenya in 1977. Maathai helped shape the movement, gave it language, defended it publicly, and connected it to the larger questions that would later define it. But the force that made it real came from women who could see exactly where the damage had entered their lives. They were not environmentalists because they enjoyed the sound of the word. They were environmentalists because the environment had stopped behaving like background. Act 2. The seedling. A movement built from trees cannot live by announcement alone. A seedling has to be raised, moved, planted, watered, watched, and sometimes replaced when it fails. This made the Greenbelt movement harder to fake than many public causes. The work had to leave traces in the ground. The women were not recruited in the manner of a party campaign, but were drawn in through recognition. A woman who needed firewood did not need to be convinced that trees mattered. The first and most important argument was already in her day. Communities were made aware of how natural resources were tied to responsibility. Then women formed nursery groups. These groups chose officials, found sites, invited guidance, and registered their work. The procedure may sound dry because it was dry. That was part of its strength. Dry things are often what keep living things alive. A nursery group gave the work a local body. It made the movement small enough to enter a village and stable enough to repeat. From there, the work could spread without turning into fog. The Greenbelt movement developed a method that moved from community awareness to group formation, from nurseries to planting sites, from records to follow-up. That follow-up made the movement more like civic practice. Women learned to ask what had been planted, where, by whom, and with what result. They learned to speak in meetings, keep accounts, make decisions, and connect visible damage to causes beyond the household. The nursery became a training ground. The movement did not drag politics into tree planting. Politics was already there. It was present in land use, in water access, in public forests, in who benefited from clearing and in who paid for it through extra labor. And once that happened, the movement could not remain only about seedlings. Act 3. The growth. The first results were practical. Trees were planted for fuel, food, shelter, soil, water, and income. Women gained some control over work that had previously been defined by scarcity. But the Greenbelt movement did not stay inside the first task. As the work widened, Maathai and the women involved came to see that environmental repair could not be separated from governance. Forests did not disappear by magic. Public land was not threatened by accident. Poverty was not improved by telling women to be patient while the resources around them were converted into someone else's opportunity. So the movement built citizen education into its work. People were asked to identify their problems, the causes of those problems, and possible solutions. That sounds harmless until people begin answering honestly. Then the room changes. This is how the movement entered the democratic struggle in Kenya. The tree became a symbol, but only after it had already been a tool. Without the work, the symbol would have been decorative. With the work behind it, the tree carried evidence. Trees were planted for peace. Trees were planted at Freedom Corner in Uhuru Park. Trees were connected to demands for prisoners of conscience and for democratic space. The same act that had begun as a household response to scarcity became part of public resistance. The state did not always respond gently. Movements that teach ordinary people to connect land, rights, corruption, and responsibility tend to irritate officials who prefer citizens in the traditional decorative role. But the Greenbelt movement had already built a base that did not depend only on one speech or one march. By 2004, when Wangari Maathai received the Nobel Peace Prize, the movement had already spent decades building that connection between environment, development, democracy, and peace. The prize recognized Maathai, and she became the first African woman to receive it. But in her lecture, she accepted it as something that also acknowledged many people and groups working quietly, often without recognition. The result of the Greenbelt women was not only a number of trees, though the numbers became large. The result was a changed relationship between ordinary women and public life. Through tree planting, they entered questions of accountability, environmental management, and democratic space. They did not begin as background to Maathai's greatness. They became the working body of a movement that made Maathai's public role possible and meaningful. Epilogue. Today, the Greenbelt movement still describes tree planting as an entry point. The vocabulary has changed with the century, but the older lesson remains clear. The environment is not scenery. It is the system that decides how far someone walks, what someone carries, what a child eats, whether soil stays, whether water remains, and whether ordinary people can still act where they live. The Greenbelt women made that visible by starting where the damage was felt first. Wangari Maathai gave the movement language, organization, defense, and international force. The Greenbelt women gave it repetition, labor, memory, and ground truth. Together, they made a cause that did not have to choose between ecology and democracy, because in their work, the two were already connected. And when enough women carried that work together, the evidence became a movement.